Hello there, men, and welcome to the Masculinism Movement channel, a place for men to be men and talk about masculinity and men's issues. I'm your host, Brian Krall, and today I'm going to be talking about who has it harder, men or women. Women say that they have it harder than men, but they're actually really just professional victims. They're indeed the weaker sex and have learned to weaponize their weakness. They play the victim so that they can hide the power that they have over us while making constant plays for more. Women have it so easy, they're like queens being carried by male slaves. Men have it much harder than women. In dating and relations with the female, the man has to do all of the work and incur almost all costs. In society, men have to take all of the harder jobs, and women now get equal pay without being expected to do equal work. And they are even claiming to be so disempowered and oppressed by men that they should actually get even more than that, but be guaranteed equal outcomes rather than just equal opportunity. Affirmative action has given women several legs up in society, and yet they still continue to complain that they have it so much worse than men, that they are so dominated by the patriarchy, when actually we live in a matriarchy and it is women dominating us men. Ask any woman who is claiming that men have it harder what evidence she has to support this. You can of course compare experiences, but what would be more interesting would be to ask her if she has had any experiences as both a woman and a man. And unless you were talking to a transgendered female, which I'm going to assume you aren't, the answer would be no, of course not. So suggest to her that she try setting up a male dating profile just to see how women treat men in the online dating market. And if she doesn't admit defeat or make up some crazy excuse to try to continue her argument without doing this, and she actually takes you up on the challenge, you can watch her then send out messages to women on the dating site as a man. And there will be messages that she thinks sound nice enough, only she won't get any positive responses. That is, if she even accepts the challenge. Most women won't, because they do not want to be proven wrong, and they know that if they do it, they will. But some women these days who are public figures or are trying to become social media influencers are actually doing these experiments when men like me challenge them to them. There have been women who like to try to give guys dating advice, and then when we say, hey, this dating advice isn't realistic, you have no idea what you're talking about because you've never experienced what it's like to be a man dating women, and we challenge them to create a dating profile as a man and use some of their own dating advice, they will do it and then be shown how wrong they are. And oftentimes they will publish, the results or do, social media posts or maybe videos on it. And it's been very interesting to see women finally doing this, because this is something I've been suggesting to women ever since I was a dating and relationship coach 10 years ago. And back in the day when I would get into debates with female dating coaches who were giving men terrible advice, there's just no way they'd admit to being wrong and that their advice was unrealistic. They just wanted to live in this idealistic fantasy land where they could tell a man to just talk like a woman, basically. And it should work, right? But it doesn't. And now they're finally being proven wrong. And beyond that, there was even a feminist who tried dressing up as a man for 18 months and infiltrating the manosphere and men's support groups. And what she found shocked her. She discovered that it is so much harder to be a man and that men get treated so much worse than women. It shocked her. But any man listening to this probably isn't shocked, right? You're probably going, wow, I'm so glad she realized that. But I'm not shocked that it happened. I mean, what else do you expect? Her experience matched yours, right? Because it took place in objective reality, unlike the female dating advice for men, which exists only in an idealistic, subjective fantasy reality. And when a woman talks about male and female differences the way that feminists do, without having this objective experience, she's speaking only from her subjective reality, which is a biased and limited perspective. And any woman who wants to talk like that without doing anything to empathize with men and understand what it's actually like to be one, like the simple social experiment of creating a male dating profile and sending out some messages, is being intentionally prejudiced against men. But objectively speaking, there are no denying these facts. And when a feminist like Nora Vincent publishes a book about her experiences actually living as a man for a year and a half and how wrong feminism was about it, other feminists can't ignore this. There are even men becoming transgendered, turning themselves into women. Sometimes not because of their sexual orientation or the gender that they feel they are, but because they want to have an easier, better life, which they know they will as a woman. Now, granted, mostly it is due to the internal personality factors, but I have met at least one trans person who told me that they did it mainly because they knew they would have a better life, and they do have many privileges that they enjoy as a woman that they don't as a man. And as for women who become transgendered into men, well, surprise, surprise, they are also reporting that life gets harder for them when they become a man. I know this because I've read articles written by female male trans men which illustrated a number of ways that their life was now worse as a man in this world. And yet, again, they were just describing the same things that I have to go through as a man that I considered commonplace. These people report that society does not treat them well as a man. In spite of the fact that men are supposed to be the more privileged class, that is not what they experience. They're actually treated with suspicion and caution, as if they are a potential threat. But now I want to get back to the cross-dressing feminist Nora Vincent, because that's really an important story. It should now be part of like our modern mythos as men in the manosphere here. Because she was a feminist who wished to document male privilege and patriarchal power and oppression by pretending to be a man for over a year and a half. And what she discovered when she did this was that men are actually not an advantage over women, but a disadvantage. In fact, it was actually extremely emotionally difficult for her to live as a man. She not only saw how men suffered, but she actually experienced the pain and misery that they have to endure firsthand for 18 whole months. She published a book about this called Self-Made Man, which she published in 2006. And there's also a documentary about her experiences, which was featured on 2020. And I encourage you to look up her story one way or another, because I'm going to share it for you in a summarized fashion, but it's certainly worth doing a deep dive into. She states that while women are said to be the sweet ones, what she found out was that men are actually much kinder than women, and women are the meaner ones, in fact. She found men's communities much more accepting and supportive than women's communities, and that men were much less judgmental towards her than women are. She found that trying to live life as a man in society is much harder than it was as a woman, that she faced much more difficulties as a man and felt much more alienated by society and disassociated. While people did believe she was a man, she was also thought to be gay due to not being as masculine as society expects men to be, which is something that made dating especially hard. And again, is something that I know a lot of men out there can relate to and is commonplace. It's something that women don't consider when they talk about us being privileged. Nora went on many dates, in fact, and found herself being rejected by every single woman she met at singles bars, and written off by every woman she went on a date with almost instantly. It was almost as if she was being prejudicially discriminated against for not being manly enough. Kind of like how all women do with all men if they aren't tall enough, or XYZ enough, whatever it is that the woman says a real man ought to be. This is just what we have to deal with. Nora even went to a men's retreat run by a men's rights activist. But after this, she started to experience mental health problems due to her negative experiences as a man, which had worn her down emotionally. Her experience was so disheartening and depressing that she checked herself into a mental hospital to be treated for anxiety and depression, and even the risk of suicide, which she felt she was in danger of committing. She needed so much mental health treatment for it that she spent a year in the clinic, which she spent writing her next book about those experiences. So unfortunately for her, the feminist messages that she thought were gospel and that she was going to prove with this social experiment did not get proven, but the opposite was shown to be true, and her indoctrination was shown to be false. After returning to living as a woman, she struggled to deal with the dark truths and harsh realities she had uncovered and to reconcile them with her feminist beliefs, and went down a dark downward spiral for many years. Later, she attempted suicide at least twice unsuccessfully. And now I think it would be appropriate to point out that I've been speaking of her in the past tense. This is because she recently did successfully commit suicide with assistance after so many years of being unable to cope with the social world as she now saw it after living as a man. She tried to go on for a long time, but in the end she was unable to, and she took her life in a euthanasia clinic in Switzerland, dying on July 6, 2022 at the age of 53. This story should be a real eye-opener for all of us, especially women, namely feminists. However, unfortunately, it seems that it has gotten largely ignored and swept under the rug by feminists and women at large, and that this woman, who should be seen somewhat as a martyr for her causes, is getting overlooked because of how she goes against the commonly accepted female narrative. And her status as a contrarian and subversive woman is probably what made her life continue to be hard after she went back to being a woman. For as she found out, women are meaner than men are. And as we men know, feminists are the meanest of all women. Feminists like to talk about male privilege and how oppressed they are by the patriarchy, but it is really just a manipulation tactic. It is a victim card they are playing to make a power move. Women are the most privileged people on the planet. They live their lives in cushy bubbles, on top of pedestals, on top of ivory towers. And men have it much harder than them, largely because of them and their status over us, as well as all the ways that feminism is constantly making these power plays, empowering themselves and disempowering men. So when you hear one of these lies, speak up. Men are the oppressed ones by women. Don't let them play these Machiavellian mind games anymore. And stop letting women make your life harder just so theirs can be easier. That concludes this talk. Thanks for listening. Be sure to share your own thoughts and opinions by who you think has it harder by commenting below. And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and share these messages with everyone by sharing the video on social media and talking about these things as well. And lastly, check out the links in the description below for other resources for your masculine personal development and living the life you want to as an independent man. And stay tuned for the next video coming out soon, which will be me disproving the claims feminists make about male privilege, where I will be listing the 80+ disadvantages of being male. And make sure you subscribe so you'll be notified when that is. And until then, take care of yourselves, men, because no woman out there is going to.